Hello and welcome to Did You Say That Out Loud? This is Marette and I'll be spending a few minutes with friends and we're going to chat about life and kids and friends and travel and crazy topics and a few memories. So I can guarantee that you will laugh and you may learn a few things about what brings people together and what keeps them connected in their relationships and their faith walk. Hope you enjoy. Well, this is Marette, and I am at Frances's house, and Frances lives in Zumbrota. So, Frances, when you first met us, what was your first thought? Your first thought that went through your head?
I'm going to be here for maybe 3 months at the most.
Yes, well, we brought Frances in from Tennessee because she needed a place, and you lived with us for a while. And that's been how many months ago? A lot of months.
18 months.
18 months. So you're assimilated as an official Minnesotan.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. All of my documents are changed. No longer California. I am 100%.
You're 100% Minnesota.
Minnesotan.
So what is the best part about living in Minnesota?
Oh, I can live in this apartment and walk to the post office, to the bank, to the supermarket, and to the library. And in Rochester, I had to take 2 buses to get to some of these things. And
well, then how about California? So you grew up in California.
yes.
So where in California did you grow up? And tell me about the community you grew up in when you were a kid.
Manhattan Beach is walking distance down the hill. We lived at the top of the hill. Down the hill is the Pacific Ocean.
Whoa.
So every summer, almost every day, I would take my rubber mat and go surfing.
On a rubber mat?
Yes.
So we know what surfboards are, but what's a rubber mat?
It's a surfboard, only shorter and made out of rubber.
Oh. So you didn't care about how big the waves were?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
You weren't scared?
Well, if it was super big, nobody went in the water.
Oh. So what temperature, this is by Los Angeles, right?
Right.
Okay, so what temperature pretty much was your world all year long?
75.
75. And Minnesota, it's not 75.
No.
But it's nice today.
Oh, yes, it is.
So what was another cool thing you did living that close to the ocean growing up?
Well,
Are there shells down there to collect?
not really.
So you either surfed, but you could walk to the beach.
Yes.
Were there any animals that ever washed up on shore?
No, there used to be big, not seagulls, but the next bigger. But they stopped coming because of quote-unquote global warming.
Oh.
And we used to have fog so thick you could hardly see your hand in front of your face.
So was it fog or smog?
Fog.
Fog,
Yeah.
coming off the ocean.
Yes. And when I was about 13 years old, there was no more fog ever
Oh.
like that. It stopped
And
completely.
was there a reason?
Global
warming?
warming.
Okay, global warming and you were 13 years old. That's a long time ago.
That's a long time.
That's a long time ago. So when did you ever travel to see some of the things in California, sites or?
Oh, yes.
So what was your favorite, maybe attraction, natural beauty?
Sequoia forest. Huge, high trees. Huge at the bottom. And they were so old. And I just really enjoyed that.
Were those the ones you could drive through?
Yes.
The trees you could drive through?
Yes.
So, but that is different than Yosemite.
Yes.
Have you been to Yosemite?
Yes.
And what's that like?
Oh, huge mountains that people climb. It's more of a cliff, a huge cliff. And people like to climb it and say, I climbed da 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 da.
Yeah.
And the falls are very nice, the waterfalls.
So that's more or less in Upper California, am I right?
Yes.
So down by LA, are there like wonders of the world, anything down by LA, or is it just people?
Oh, Hollywood is a wonder of the world. People come there continually.
So have you been to see the handprints in the sidewalk or whatever, all that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So is there any one that you were enamored with?
No.
No. I've been to LA once and I never care to go back.
Right, I can understand that.
Yeah.
From Cass and
So how about San Diego?
I've been there many times. They have a nice big zoo. You can see animals that you wouldn't otherwise see. And it is the entry point for illegal aliens from Mexico. They just walk across the border and they're in San Diego.
Yep, that's that in Texas and any border states, you got that problem. So you went to USC or
Yes.
UCLA? USC?
Yes.
What was your degree in and why? Why did you go and get that degree?
Music, because it was easy and it was my life. And my mother got a Bachelor of Music in piano. And she taught me ever since age 5, as soon as I could sit on the bench. And so, yep, I am a musician ever since childhood.
So keyboard, so
Yes.
piano and organ.
Yes.
Did you try any other instruments?
Oh, you couldn't graduate unless you took flute.
So could you play flute?
Yes.
I can never get the flute to blow. I'm
Yeah.
blowing wrong. Embouchure.
Yes.
What other instruments did you try?
That was mainly it.
No stringed instruments.
Oh, yes, you have to hold it in your hand and make a few notes, but not take 4-month course.
Oh, okay. So when you left USC, what was your dream?
Well, my first dream was to be an organist in a big church. But there were other organists who graduated, and they got those jobs. They were men. And I had second thoughts about spending so many hours every day practicing the music at the organ. And so I was a substitute teacher in the public school. And
How did that go?
horrible. The children walked right over me, and
You're a very meek and mild person.
yeah, we didn't go together at all.
So did you ever consider leaving California for other jobs? Because there's jobs all around, but did you ever consider leaving California?
No.
You were a California girl.
Yes.
And now look at you.
Look at me. Yeah.
So eventually you ended up traveling all around the world.
Yes.
So you've lived in Australia and New Zealand.
Yes.
Best thing about Australia? Now, I was in Darwin and we were up at the Kakadu. So we saw a lot of Northwest Territory. And you were down, where did you
I
spend?
covered all 4 corners.
All 4
by the time.
corners.
14 years there. So the initially best part was Australia is modern. I lived in New Zealand for 8 years before that, and it was like living in the 1940s or 50s in lots of ways. And people told me, oh, New Zealand is 10 years behind Australia. So I felt like I was home when I went to Australia.
The Opera House?
Didn't go there.
Didn't go there? Is it pretty in Sydney?
Oh, it depends upon where you go.
Because it's a big city.
Yes.
Which you're used to with LA. So did you go up to the mountains toward, up north to the mountains, the Adelaides and all that?
Just once.
Just once? So what was pretty much what you did in Australia and New Zealand?
I went to New Zealand and Australia as a missionary, Christian missionary. And so I would find Christians that believed and did like I do, and I helped them. And on the way to doing that, wherever I was, I had my purse full of illustrated chick tracts, and I would look at the faces, and whoever had an open face, I would talk to them about life or about Jesus. And I'd say most of the people that I gave a tract to said thank you, and they were reading it right away, and I was grateful.
Because you never know where that will go. You
Right.
plant the seed. You used to frame open face.
Yes.
That's a really neat way to say it, because when you walk down the street and people don't meet your eyes, no relational
Don't
anything.
start it.
But when someone looks up and catches your eye, you have the chance. I like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So what did you do for fun? Don't tell me you didn't have any fun. What did you do for fun? Don't tell me you didn't have fun.
I would have fun looking for a health food store so I could find some organic food.
Is that
eat.
not the norm over there?
It is absolutely not the norm in either New Zealand or Australia.
So do they don't grow organic, or they don't know how to distribute it?
Both.
Okay, because I would not, now I can be wrong, so you'll correct me. I think of New Zealand maybe as more of a farming mentality. I don't think of Australia as farming.
No.
Okay, so they import a lot of their product? Because Singapore, when Adley lived in Singapore, everything was imported. Everything. Nothing was grown in Singapore, because Singapore is just 5 million, probably 6 million people. And they just have people. So New Zealand, I would have thought, had more options for that kind of a thing. Organic, farming, anything.
Well, for some reason, people graduate from high school and the only thing on their mind is move to Australia or move to England where there are jobs.
Oh, okay.
And so the population goes down.
That changes. That changes.
Yes.
So what is the temperature and climate in New Zealand, for most part?
Where I was, it was basically like Manhattan Beach.
Okay. Did you ever try surfing?
No.
When you grew up, you didn't surf anymore?
That's right.
Okay, because that might lend to being hurt. Do you still love the ocean?
Oh, yes. Yes.
We don't have oceans in Minnesota.
No.
We have Lake Superior. It's not an ocean.
Not an ocean.
So where else have you lived between Australia and New Zealand and California? Minnesota. Or is that it?
That's it.
That's about it. So one good thing from each place. One good thing from California. It was your home.
Yeah. I found out later, well, I did live in North Carolina when I went to university. I found out people outside of California think that Californians are rather experimental. And if you want something wild, or you think wild, or you do wild, go to California. And I never thought of that growing up, but yeah, you're free to think differently than everybody else.
You're not a Swede in Minnesota. You're a Swede or Norwegian. That's kind of what it is. Although, what nationality is your family heritage?
England, Northern Ireland, Germany.
Okay, so you're just the same mess we are. Yep,
Okay.
we're Scottish and Irish and German.
Yeah.
So what really neat thing did you learn in Australia?
I appreciated getting acquainted with Aboriginal people. I served an Aboriginal leader, Christian leader, lady leader, for about 6 months. And then I found out some personal things about her that were absolutely not Christian. And I could no longer be so close to helping her ministry. But through her, I met a lot of other Aboriginals, and it just broadened my life.
Yeah, it does when we, how about New Zealand?
I played the piano in a New Zealand Maori congregation, and that was interesting.
So now we're going to jump to Minnesota.
Yeah.
You're content here.
Yes.
Never thought you'd be in a crazy place. What is one, other than walking to everything, what is one thing you really like about southern Minnesota? It's a different world.
Yeah.
Because you came from California via Nashville to our farm.
That's right.
And that's a huge change.
Yes.
Huge change.
When you said you drove an hour to get to your husband to give him his lunch, and he was working on your farm, I thought, these are one of those huge farm people. And I enjoyed the experience of being on that type of land.
Totally different experience for you. And I would think, I'm not positive, but you'll correct me, we can drive an hour and get somewhere. If you're in a big city, you can drive an hour and sit in traffic or traffic jams.
Yes.
So it's a lot different in a small community. Somebody will say, well, I commute a half an hour to work, but they sit in traffic. They're only maybe 10 miles, but they sit in traffic. Whereas here I can be in Rochester. I can make it to your place in less than 20 minutes. You're just driving because there's nobody to, nothing to stop.
Yeah.
So
I don't miss the traffic at all.
not at all.
I went to go empty my storage unit after 1 year of not finding a place to bring my things. And it was bumper to bumper on the freeway and off the freeway.
And did that remind you why you're glad you're not in California?
Oh, yes.
So last question. What is one of the neatest memories when you were growing up? That takes you back a ways because you're not a young chick.
My father and mother and I were seated at the dinner table, and Mother was faithful to make lunch for her husband every work day, and he'd come home and eat it. Then he'd stand up and he'd walk over. He'd walk over to her and said, "That was a good lunch, sweetie." Every time. And I thought, that's nice of him. And he does it every time. And Mother enjoyed it.
That's neat.
And when I went outside of our family unit, they didn't do that. The men just got up and left. But my daddy came over and hugged my mother and told her that was a good lunch, sweetie.
So my question would be, how many of those lunches maybe weren't good, but it didn't matter? Or was your mom a good cook?
Oh, she was a good cook.
So when we were young, we always had to, after lunch, this was trained, we had to go say to our parent, our mother, "Thank you for the very fine meal, may we be excused."
Wow.
So that was something you did. And so our kids grew up doing that.
Wow.
And we were at some friend's house one time. Well, you remember Ron and Rosalie. We went to eat with them. So my kids, Tyler gets up from the table and he goes over to Rosalie and he says, "Thank you for the very fine dinner, may I be excused?" And she said no. And he went and sat back in the chair like he'd never been told. But she had a special game for him. But I think respect and appreciation for what somebody does, that's really neat.
That's really
What
neat.
did your father do for a living?
He had, in the beginning, he built houses. And then when he couldn't do that anymore, he started his own plumbing supply store. Yep.
Cool. And your mother had a music degree. Did she teach piano other than you?
No.
No. She just enjoyed music.
She played in the church, and she played in the church. and
She played in the church. Well, Frances, this has been fun. Thank you for visiting.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.